Short introduction to Jo. Apart from the fact that she's the founder of Travel Without Plastic and GreenAGuest, another initiative, she has many years of experience in the tourism industry, including health and safety auditing, sustainability auditing, and implementing quality assurance programs within hotels. So she's very related and focused on tourism. But even so, I always feel like even if you're not related to tourism or you're not a hotel, I think every single business that belongs to the value chain of tourism can actually learn a lot from this presentation. So Jo, all yours.
Great, thank you very much, Kim. I'll just share my screen with you all so you have the presentation there. Hopefully you can see that okay. So I am going to read from some notes today. That's just to keep me to the short time frame of 10 or 11 minutes or so, because if I don't do that, I'm very likely to go off and talk to you for ages. So I want to keep within the time. So as Kim said, my name is Jo Hendrickx. I'm the founder of Travel Without Plastic, and I've been in the tourism industry now for over 20 years. And I've worked in plastic reduction in hotels actually since back in 2011, before it had the notoriety and the interest that it has today. So I founded Travel Without Plastic itself in 2017, and since then we've worked with hotel chains and tour operators from around the world, and we've created a range of guidance documents, online toolkits, and we've undertaken workshops and webinars which we've trained hundreds of hospitality staff. And over these years, one of the biggest questions that we're always asked is about finding suitable alternatives. And that led us to create a platform called GreenAGuest. This is a marketplace. It's still in development at the moment, but you will find on there very recently launched an e-learning that covers this topic of how to reduce plastic and keep staff and guests safe. That's already on the site. It's available in Spanish, hopefully by the end of the year, possibly the beginning of next year, as we're just working with some technical experts to get that translated and loaded. So we'll let Kim know when that's available, or you can subscribe to the site to get a notification on that if you'd like to do it in Spanish. So we don't have very long today. What I want to do is dive straight in. And firstly, just to make it quite clear, even though our name is Travel Without Plastic, we don't believe that plastic is the enemy. It has very good qualities that you can see on the screen there that make it a fabulous material. It's designed to last, you know, it's designed to be durable. And so the problem really with plastic today is not the material itself, but it's how we use it. And we use most single-use products for literally minutes, sometimes even seconds before we discard them. And it's almost like that plastic has no value to us. You know, if we lose a plastic water bottle somewhere, we don't go looking for it, we just buy another one. But we can't carry on like this. In some of the hotels that we work with globally, these are the sorts of statistics that we're seeing on an annual basis per hotel. There are hundreds and thousands of single-use plastic items being consumed by hotels all over the world. So we really have to do something about it, and we have to change. And to be honest, we were doing quite well. You know, we were seeing many businesses change, many businesses creating new strategies to reduce plastic, and then suddenly COVID-19 hit. And single-use plastic got a new lease of life, and it almost became the answer to everything. So can we actually balance sustainability and safety? I think, well, I personally think we have to do that. If we keep returning to single-use plastic every time we have a problem, then we're really just shifting our issues to a later date, to a later time, rather than thinking strategically about how to future-proof our businesses and destinations now. As Kim said earlier, before working in sustainability, I was actually a health and safety auditor in hotels for 7 years. And for all of my time in health and safety, the answer to preventing the spread of infection and preventing illness was to examine processes and procedures so that we could identify where risks were most likely to occur and we could mitigate them or eliminate them. The answer was never to just simply go out and buy single-use plastic products. And I don't know why this has become the answer now. I think that's really quite interesting, but it's very obvious that we need to put more emphasis on logical thinking, on planning, and also using good communications to reassure our guests and customers that their well-being is taken care of. And this is why I think it's so important, because there's a lot of false perceptions out there when it comes to single-use plastic, and actually single-use plastic products like film, cling film that you see here, it's still a surface. It's a surface the same as everything else, and every surface is a potential transmitter of bacteria or viruses. Now, I took this picture myself whilst on holiday recently here in the Canary Islands, and in some ways I can understand why there might be plastic on the pears or the apples, for instance, because people might eat them at the buffet before they maybe take them back to the room and wash them. But bananas and oranges that are in their own skin, that are protected. And when I asked about it in a really nice way, I was told by the executive chef that it's because most people pick up the fruit and they want to feel it, they want to squeeze it to see if it's ripe. And doing that means they could contaminate the fruit, so they wrapped it in plastic. But actually, if you spend 20 minutes or so just watching that buffet, you'll notice that people do exactly the same thing. They pick it up anyway. It doesn't matter that it's wrapped in plastic, and they still want to know if the fruit is white, and they'll put it back. So the plastic film is making no difference whatsoever to reducing the potential risks. All it's really doing is generating extra waste, and that's not even recyclable. So it makes no sense. In many of the current COVID regulations, refillable condiments, sauces, mayonnaise, ketchup, those things are actually acceptable as long as you have a procedure to sanitize them between uses. Now, this might mean a lot of different things to different businesses. It may mean that you have to have a lot of stock to ensure that condiment bottles can be removed and replaced after each use. What we definitely find isn't the answer, if you think logically, are plastic sachets. And there's a reason for this. I recently watched how people interacted with sachets in a restaurant, and if you get the opportunity, it's quite interesting to do that. People don't just touch one sachet, they touch them all. And that's because you're usually rummaging through to find the one that you want, or because they're notoriously difficult to open. So you can try and try, doesn't open, you put one back, you take another one. I've even watched people open them or try to open with their teeth and put them back because they can't open them. And then if you subsequently watch the staff as the tables are cleared, they don't sanitize all of the sachets before they put them back for the next guest. It would actually be cleaner, less time consuming for staff, and easier for guests to use the larger bottles and clean them properly between uses. Or there are other options such as pre-portioning jams and honeys, etc. on a buffet. We saw this very recently in glass jars, but again, people will still pick these jars up to see what's inside. But you can limit the amount of contact by providing really clear labeling on the display above each jar, for instance, and make sure that staff check regularly that those jars are in the right place. And then this other image, also in the Canaries, shows a really great way of providing condiments and jams, etc., still meeting portion control, but in a way that helps you to stay hygienic. I also found this was quite an interesting picture. So that this was the setup, the pictures on the right there were the setup of the tea and coffee facilities in our hotel room, and the tea bags and the milk and what have you was placed in the brown paper bag for safety, but nothing else in the room. So you kind of think, well, did the germs only stick to the tea and the coffee bags and the milk sachets? It just doesn't seem to make sense. Other ways to do this that we've seen that work really well are to provide items in refillable jugs, like you see on the picture on the bottom there, because these need to be changed daily. And this itself is a visual communication of cleanliness for guests, and it's probably about the same amount of effort as it is to put everything into the paper bag. Then we want to look at avoiding unnecessary new items that have popped up as a result of COVID. So these door stickers, I think, are quite interesting. Now, if you think about this logically, the sticker doesn't guarantee that the room is clean. The sticker guarantees that nobody has been in the room since the sticker was stuck onto the door. So I would expect my room to be clean, but it's the process of cleaning that guarantees this and not the sticker. And it's quite easy to prove the point in this case, because if you look closely at the glass tumbler on the bottom picture, you can actually still see the toothpaste marks in there from a previous guest. So the room actually hadn't been cleaned properly. It's much better to have the processes working right than to resort to using single-use products. And we also want to try to avoid, where we can, switching from one material to another, because that doesn't really help us to reduce volumes of overall waste. It might help us to say we don't use so much plastic, but we're still going to be generating very similar volumes of waste. And to be honest, as a business, this probably costs you a lot more as well. In both of these scenarios, the plastic wrap and the cardboard box will end up as waste. But if we change the process and allow more time, then we can avoid those wastes altogether. And then what other options are there? I wanted to talk very quickly about bottled water, because in the work that we do and have done for many years now, by far the #1 item of waste created from hotels and hospitality businesses is bottled water from plastic. And tap water in the Canaries is generally not water that we would drink, but it's good enough quality to filter and to be able to offer free water refills. For instance, if you're in an all-inclusive, this is a great option because it really does help to save a lot on costs as well. Or if you need to generate income from bottled water, then you can filter water and bottle it on site so that you can continue to sell that. Now, both of these options do need a change in processes, but this is the whole point. This is what we want to look at, is putting processes over the products. There's a lovely picture we took in La Gomera where we saw the bottles from Agüita, which is a local Canarian brand, on display in the Ticina Gulf, which was fantastic. But there were no facilities to refill them on site, which was really a shame. So we always advise any businesses that are happy to provide reusable bottles for sale that it's also a really, really good opportunity to give people a chance to refill them. Otherwise, it can potentially be seen as greenwash. And refill is also great for toiletries as well, and this can be done very hygienically. I know that sometimes there can be concerns around hygiene from refillable toiletries, but there are some top tips on the screen there, and you can find a lot more of the detail of that on the Travel Without Plastic website in some of our blogs, and I'll let you just read those points very quickly. And there's a similar process. I don't know if any of you have heard of the contactless coffee. This is becoming a lot more popular now in the UK and in coffee shops where people really do want to be able to use their reusable cup. And it seems that now coffee shops have got over the panic of COVID when some of them initially banned the use of reusable coffee cups. When you actually take a step back and think about it logically, there are really easy ways to be able to get around that and still reduce single use without impacting upon hygiene standards. One of the biggest reasons that we found many organisations have gone back to single-use plastic is because it gives this visual communication of hygiene. But as we've seen from some of the slides I've shown, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are more hygienic if you resort to single-use plastic. So it's really important to think about how you can use good communications to reassure your guests and customers that you have their well-being as a priority, and that you've taken steps to reduce the risk of transmission, but without needing to resort to single-use plastic. So this means knowing who your customers are, who the audience is, how to reach them at different platforms. And if you're a hotel, this could even be before they travel. How do you communicate them when they stay on site with you? What do you want to say to them? How do you want to say it? When do you want to say it? So some research that some colleagues of ours did found that many hotel customers thought about how rooms were cleaned when they were actually sat in the room. So it's a good way to have information available in the hotel room, either via the app on the television screen, for instance, or if you're able to via printed materials, to tell people about how the room is cleaned when they're in the room, or to tell people how to use the lift when they're outside of the lift. You want to look at the positioning of those communications and how to say it, and it's worth spending some time on this to get those communications and that reassurance message right. So to sum up, because we've obviously covered a lot here and we're very short of time, but I think it's important for us to really think that COVID, unfortunately could be with us for another 12, another 18 months. The impacts of it could be with us for even longer. We really don't know. But what we do know is the plastic that we use today could be with us for centuries. So I think we really do have to find another way. We'll be able to discuss this a lot more just now in the Q&A. Otherwise, you can follow us on Travel Without Plastic or GreenAGuest on any of the connection mediums that you can see on the screen there. And with that, I'll finish. Thank you, Kim.